You're listening to Three Kitchens podcast, hosted by Aaron Walker and Heather Dyer.
We're home cooks, sharing our kitchen adventures with you. Let's all get inspired, cook better, and eat great food. Okay, well, hello and welcome to today's episode of Three Kitchens podcast. My name is Erin Walker, and joining me today is Heather Dyer, my co-host.
Hello, Erin.
Hello! And today we are having our third kitchen join us. Her name is Cheryl Holling, and she is a voice actor and podcaster that is passionate about hearing and telling stories. She hosts two podcasts, one called 19 Stories from Fear to Hope, where she shares conversations with creatives about challenges that they've faced, how they've persevered, and created a hope-filled future. And second, The Voice Kitchen, where Cheryl joins up with fellow voice actors and foodies at her virtual table to share stories around their most special recipes. So obviously, she was a natural fit to come and join us here on Three Kitchens. Welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you so much. And that was so good. You're hired. You're hired. I love that. You know, when people ask you to give the synopsis or your elevator pitch and you're like, listen to Erin. This is what I do. Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be with you guys because I love what you're doing. And I thought of that as well, that we're actually the Three Kitchens are together again.
Yeah, well, we're so happy to have you because clearly, as Erin said, we all love to talk about food. You have a podcast talking about recipes. We have a podcast talking about recipes. It's just meant to be.
It's kismet.
Yeah.
Here we are. I like eating more than I like talking about it. But it's okay. We can talk about it, and then we'll sign off, and we'll go to our respective kitchens.
This is just to whet our appetites, right?
Yeah. So this podcast should come with a warning for everyone at the top, like could or is likely to cause hunger, because we always leave feeling hungry for something.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about your journey around becoming a voice actor, because that's something that definitely really piques our curiosity as uber amateurs.
Well, and as podcasters and as audiobook fans, but we're very picky, as I think probably most listeners are. We're very picky about the voices we put in our ears, and so curious about how one becomes a voice actor.
And I think it's good that you're picky. There's a lot of noise out there, and we want to fill our heads with good stuff, good podcasts, good food, good voices. I grew up in a very creative home. My mom was a singer. My dad was an actor. And since very early on, I did voices. And it's funny, you're going to hear this from other voice actors, or people say, oh, I've always been told I had a good voice. I should get into voice acting. That wasn't my thing. It was just characters were in me when I was really young. And part of it was an escape. I was kind of a really awkward kid. So my defense mechanism was to make people laugh. And I grew up watching Warner Brothers cartoons, a lot of the things that I grew up with. And so I would do characters. That's just what I gravitated towards. And got sent to the principal's office a couple of times because I would mimic people, not because I was trying to make fun of them, but because I wanted to get what their character was. I wanted to kind of get their voice print. And as I got older, I started my first year in college. I worked at a college radio station. Always wanted to work for a radio station. Grew up on radio, loved radio, still love good radio. There's not the stations that I grew up with. They don't exist anymore. But I worked at a college radio station, which now is really kind of one of the premier NPR stations here in the States. And so from there, I got into the music business. And at the same time, I was studying theater arts and communication. So I was using my chops in the things that I would do for the college radio station, and also some of the reporting that I would do at school and what have you. So after I went into the music business for a while, I went and followed my other love, which is theater, went to New York and studied acting, came back to California rather, and did some on-camera stuff and started to do some voiceover at that time. I worked for the Writers Guild of America West. I was their first female announcer in 69 years of their show. So I did some live announcing. I did like I said. And then when I moved up here in Northern California, where I live now, I did some local things. My most recent project, I worked on an animated piece. It's actually for a animated podcast. It's a dramatic podcast that's coming out. So it's this little bit part that is so much fun. But it's really been a journey. There's a saying in entertainment that if you want to be in entertainment, you got to learn to be ambidextrous. In other words, you do whatever you have to do in between getting gigs. And so that's what I've done. And I've done on-camera work, I've done voiceover, and now podcasting, which is really, to me, bringing it all together. I love podcasting. I love this medium where we can tell our stories, because whether we're talking about a recipe or we're talking about someone's life journey, it's all stories. And there's always something to take away. And then also just growing up with my mom, who was a home ec teacher for a while in between her singing, and the recipes that she did. And then as I got older, to kind of adapt them to a healthier lifestyle that was away from lots of creams and canned soups and lots of things that, older generation would make these recipes that you just go, okay, we're just going to tweak it a little bit so that I can live another day. So that's a long answer to your question, but that's how I got into voiceover initially.
It's really interesting.
So fascinating. I love the creative realm of things, right? Like talking with other creatives and finding out how you kind of like weave this path into where you are at this point is just fascinating always.
Thank you. Sometimes, and I'm sure both of you can relate to this, you'll get that feedback as well. And you're like, I'm just living my life and it doesn't seem very fascinating. But do you know what I'm saying? And then you go, but it is. Your creativity and what you guys create, both visually with sharing your food, the dishes that you make, and doing the actual work of it. It is a work of art. I mean, my husband thinks I'm brilliant, but like, honey, it's just a sandwich. But
it's never just a sandwich.
A sandwich. I know.
No,
it's never just a sandwich.
It's never just a sandwich.
Well, I had been listening to your podcasts, and I really enjoy the way your guests seem to take, like in the Voice Kitchen, how they'll take a simple recipe, something my mom used to make, and somehow I don't realize it, but by the end of it, I have just been sucked into this like entire story. It's like a story that has been woven into this retelling of a very simple recipe. It's amazing to me how you think, we often think we're just sort of retelling a recipe, which I think is kind of what we do. But in this case, your guests are not just explaining how to make a sauce. They are weaving in all these personal anecdotes and memories and stories, and it just really brings it to life. You can see the grandma at the stove, or I think your guests do a really amazing job of telling the story around some simple recipe.
Well, thank you. And part of that, I have a feeling you're might be referring to Brandon Miller's episode.
Well, I was thinking of the sauce because I did just listen to that recently, but I've listened to others as well. And I feel like it just becomes the retelling is an art in itself. Do you think?
And they're voice actors.
Yeah.
So that's where their storytelling comes in, because they're used to taking a script and reading someone else's story, but it's their story that comes out, which is, to me, just offering a side of them that you wouldn't know if you just heard them, if you heard them in a commercial, you heard them in a documentary, or whatever their medium is, you get a chance to hear a little bit about who they are as people. So thank you, Heather. I really appreciate that, because that's what I was trying to create and have listeners experience when they listen to the Voice Kitchen.
The project that you're speaking of, animated podcast?
Well, when I say it's animated, there's a lot of characters, and it's called if I may say, it's called The Mysterious Chirp.
Okay.
And it's brilliantly done. It takes place in space stations. It's a murder mystery taking place in space station, and it's not on video. It's all audio.
It makes me think of old-fashioned radio.
Yes, I grew up at a station where there was old time radio and listen to old time radio dramas, which I love because it's theater of the mind and you can create. It's like, Heather, what you were experiencing listening to the Voice Kitchen, everybody has their interpretation of what that is, right? So that's coming. I'll let you guys know when that episode comes out. So
yeah, that sounds so fun.
Oh, that is really fun. So your mom being a home ec teacher, was she the one who taught you how to cook when you were growing up then?
I just really watched her. I mean, she was a substitute home ec teacher, again, doing whatever she needed to do while pursuing her artistic goals. But I would watch her and I would help her in the kitchen. And, I loved holidays because, stuffing was my favorite. It still is my favorite. In fact, I was torn between what we're going to talk this recipe versus what I kind of nicknamed the soul sandwich at Thanksgiving, which maybe I'll just share that. Basically, soul sandwich is you take at that time, we used to have a bread called wheatberry bread, which had like wheatberry kernels in it. It was wheat with wheatberry kernels in it.
Yeah.
Lightly toast it, slather on the mayonnaise. It's the one time a year that I would like calories, schmalories, right? Mayonnaise, stuffing, cranberry sauce, my mom's own cranberry relish, turkey. And then if you really wanted to feel semi-healthy, you put a slice of, a piece of lettuce, right? You go, oh, I got my greens.
We balanced it out with one slice of iceberg lettuce. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would help her in the kitchen doing things like stuffing. And I loved watching the turkey prep because it was magical to me. And then she would sew it up and she would slow roast it and then smelling it all through the evening. And
yeah, it sounds very traditional prairie cooking.
Yes.
From my perspective, for sure. Yeah.
Well, again, she's from Winnipeg. So you had to do some prairie cooking because it gets dang cold. Like, I need some fat on my body to make it through the winter. They're like bears.
There are strategies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Going to my aunt's house and then watching the different dishes she would make because my mother's side of the family, Christian, my father's side of the family, Jewish. So during the holidays, there's always different foods to draw from, like kugel and knishes and things like that on my aunt's side.
Yeah. And I can imagine then as you go off in the world on your own that you bring a little bit of this and a little bit of that and make your own traditional meals that have a little bit of each. And I love that.
The one thing it taught me, though, is being around different cultures, we all share similar dishes that are just shaped and named differently. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
They're just similar ingredients, but they're just dressed differently, but in such a unique, fantastic way. At least that's what I found.
They often add like little regional flares to something where it's like it's, the basic is the same, and then that little thing that you finish off at the end is like, oh, that's interesting.
That's why we can enjoy like so many different dumplings and pierogi and all the different. There's stuff wrapped up in
dough.
Yeah, ravioli is another version of dumpling. So it's just depending on the culture. I'm getting hungry.
See?
I'll see you later. This has been great.
We tried to warn you. This episode is part of our guest host series. We're inviting fellow podcast hosts to cook with us and help you discover new shows. Today's guest is Cheryl Holling, voice actor and host of 19 Stories from Fear to Hope and The Voice Kitchen. Find her work at cherylholling.com and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you liked this episode with Cheryl, how about sharing it with a friend? Okay, let's get back to that recipe.
So tell us about the recipe that you chose to share with us.
Okay. And again, at first I felt so silly. I'm like, this is so basic. But the reason I love this recipe is it really has been adapted through the years. I worked for Williams-Sonoma for 5 years, part-time. And for those who aren't familiar with what Williams-Sonoma is, it was started by Chuck Williams in the mid-50s. In his travels through Europe, he noticed that there were cooking utensils and things that were available in France and England that weren't available in the States. So he decided to import some of those items and put them in what he had at the time, a hardware store. And they took off because that was at the time that Julia Childs was becoming very popular. But while I was working at Williams-Sonoma, we would do cooking demos all the time because you want to cookware that you wanted to demonstrate. So one of the sample items that were being done, it was a crusty quesadilla where the demo person was putting the oil and spices and cheese in the pan prior to adding the tortilla. And then once she added the tortilla, then she added the filling of the cheese or chicken, whatever she wanted to do, then folded it over and then repeated the same on the other side. And I thought, what if you did it with like a tuna melt? So that's where Cheryl's Crunchy Crust cast iron tuna melt comes from, is that I thought, I'm going to try this with my tuna melt. So instead of the cheese being on the inside, which you can still do, I mean,
Load
cheese
it
on
up
if you want, right?
Yeah.
I put it on the outside. So that's where this recipe morphed out of.
I think it's really genius to put the seasoning, the cheese too, but I thought the seasoning was like for me, like, don't just season whatever goes inside your sandwich, season the whole sandwich, the bread, and getting it, it's kind of like when you make sliders and you do a little olive oil with seasoning kind of on top to get that little bit of crispy seasoned bun. Oh my gosh,
yes.
Yeah, and my kids always really love that. So then when I saw your recipe, I was like, oh, I know what we're having.
Did you make it?
Oh yes, Erin and I both made it.
We both made it. I've now made it a couple times. I'm going to admit.
Oh my gosh, I want to did you take pictures?
Oh, you bet.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait yes, I can't wait to see it. Oh, that's brilliant. Wonderful.
I've had people tell me about like an open face grilled cheese, put the cheese on the pan before the bread. And I'm always like, oh, that sounds interesting. And I've never tried it. Like it just never crossed my mind to like, oh, I should try that this time. Right. So I was really excited to see this as the method in here because I was like, oh, this is finally I'm forced to do this because I keep thinking about it after the fact. Like, oh, I should have done that. Okay, next time I'll do it, right? And then you forget about it. And I really liked the crispy, crunchy, spicy, like spiced cheese on the bottom.
I'm so glad. Now, I'm curious what type of bread you used when you made yours.
So I just used my homemade bread because I make like an overnight, no knead bread. And it's a whole wheat and white flour mix with a bunch of seeds. I
bet you it's delicious.
It's really good toasted just because it gets like chewy plus crispy. So it's like, it's my favorite thing to make a grilled cheese with. It is fantastic with this recipe. I love
it sounds delicious. It really does.
Perfect.
Now I have to admit that I'm not a big fan of canned tuna personally. And so that just got me thinking, even though my kids like it and I could have made it for them that way. And I keep talking just about my kids because when my husband works nights, it's just the kids and I, and that's when we often eat ramen or grilled cheese or chicken finger, like what easy stuff that the kids and I like. And we don't have to hear the complaints from my husband who wants like something more. So I was like, this is the perfect thing to make when it's just me and the kids. And because I'm not the biggest fan of tuna, I happened to be at the store when I was thinking about it. And so I was looking at the other options and I picked up chicken and flaked ham. So like a can of chicken, can of ham. My kids love ham especially. So for theirs, I used ham. For mine, I used chicken. I thought the chicken didn't have quite enough flavor for me. I thought it needed something. It was a little bland. The kids love the ham, and I added chopped dill pickles into them. I thought black olives would have been really great too, because I love any kind of olive would have been great. A little bit of salt in there. I think it's so versatile. You could put whatever thing you love if you want to put in chilies or you want to put in, I don't know.
Roasted red peppers.
Ooh, I haven't tried it with that.
Sun-dried tomatoes. I went and made 4 different sandwiches because my family decided to be really fussy when I was like, oh, I'm going to ask them what they want in their sandwiches.
That was your first mistake.
I know, like...
Don't do that.
I should know better by now, really.
This is what we're having.
Yes.
This was my mistake because I was all excited. Ooh, what would you like in yours? So my one son, tuna's a no-go because he doesn't eat any fish. So I took off of Heather's wonderful thought of like, get a thing of flaked ham because he likes ham. So I made his he had ham and pickles and cheddar cheese with it. My other son did the tuna with celery and pickles. My husband did the tuna with celery, hot peppers. So
Wow.
like pickled hot
Okay.
peppers, like banana peppers.
Mm.
And then I had olives in mine. So I had
You
4 little
really had
bowls of like
oh,
different things going because I just was having fun. It's an easy meal. You get to kind of, you can zhuzh it up and do it your way.
there's no rules with this, right? That's what I love about it. And I put red pepper flakes in the pan, and sometimes I forget how spicy they get as they get hotter and infused with the oil, and you're like, shh. We have Trader Joe's here. I'm not a big ham person, but they make the most delicious, like almost paper thin rosemary ham that is so amazing. I've done it with rosemary ham and cheese. I've done it with tuna. You can also, if you want to do it with canned salmon, where it almost comes out like almost like a salmon patty, but you don't want to add too many breadcrumbs because then it gets, it's too bready.
Right. Gotcha.
Turkey, chicken, like you say, grilled cheese. It makes a phenomenal grilled cheese. Like because I know you have a grilled cheese recipe on that you've done. Just to do the outside where you crisp it up on the outside, and then you have the gooiness on the inside, 3 or 4 different kinds of cheeses on the inside. So it's really versatile, and especially during the winter months when you want something that's really comfort with a bowl of like tomato soup or pea soup, that you can dip it in. I'm a dipper.
Yes, I love this. So good. I had my pan a little hot. I will just caution anyone else out there, because when you put the cheese in, I put the bread down, then I put my filling on, then I put the other bread, and by that point, it's like, oh, it's quite hot. So just a little note to watch the temperature, because you don't want to like burn the cheese before you have a chance.
Right. So that's why I think I even put it in the recipe that you've got to prep everything first, because you got to work fast. To me, solid white tuna packed in water, drained, obviously, because to me, I don't want the sodium from the tuna, like pre-salted tuna, to interfere with whatever spices I want to add to the tuna mixture itself and then to the bread. So I think I've never made it with packed light tuna, because I think it would just whatever cooking term that is.
It's French.
It's French for sure.
We've talked about that before. In fact, we use that word all the time.
We often make faces or sounds because there's really no other way to describe the
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
that sometimes happens.
Yeah, I can see how you want it to hold up.
Yes.
And the other thing you're doing is using mayo on the bread, right?
Yes. Now you can use butter.
Yes. I love it.
Yes.
That's cool.
And by the way, you can still make the quesadilla. It makes insane quesadillas to do it this way.
I will also be going back and playing with the quesadilla part of this.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds great.
I like the idea of having that crispy outer crust on the quesadilla if I'm going to pack it, right? Because like when I make a quesadilla at home and I want it to go, like if I pack it to go hiking or whatever, it's kind of like not so great by the time it gets the face and the sound by the time I whip it out on the trail. But I feel like it would hold up better if it had that crispy cheese with whatever I've got going on inside, because then you'd maintain that, right? You'd still get that crunch.
Yeah, it's like seal the bread on the outside with cheese.
Exactly. And
I love it.
Can we really go wrong with more cheese?
More cheese, Gromit.
Nope. Well, I love it. Thank you for sharing it with us, because
yes,
I think it sounds so simple, but I think listeners will also really be surprised at how it amps up a very simple sandwich.
You're welcome.
I'm happy that we can share it, because it's a great idea.
Well, I can't wait to see your pictures.
Mine was a little hot, remember? So maybe we'll share Erin's picture.
Good comfort food, easy to make, and a great way to take something from a can and make something feels custom, feels special, right? When you can add these things to it and just make it that little bit extra.
I think that's the thing about cooking that in the Voice Kitchen we talk about, because there's been some very basic recipes. And there's one that's so elaborate. I'm like, oh, listeners are never gonna make But you can take some of the simplest things and, as you say, zhuzh it up a bit and customize it to obviously doing 4 different mixtures at once. But I had never thought of doing like pickled onions. I have done dried onions, like a nice crisp green salad with it, and some lemonade, because lemon with fish is so good, and it kind of cuts into the fat of the cheese and the mayonnaise and what have you. So
Totally.
I think it's going to go on the camping menu this summer because it's easy to whip up some of these on the griddle.
Cook it over the fire on a little cast iron pan.
Yeah, on the fire or on the barbecue.
where are we going? Where are we going camping? I want to go camping.
Come on up.
I would
on
love
up to Canada
to.
and come
I would
camping with
love
us,
to.
Cheryl.
And this is just my PSA. Maybe hopefully it's okay. Just to let your listeners in Canada know that we love our Canadian brothers and sisters, and not all of us are in agreement with what's going on. I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you for that. And at least half, varies a little bit here and there, but at least half of our listeners are in the United States. So we have a big US family at 3 Kitchens. Really nice. Some point we'll have to dig in and give some shout outs to different cities because it's really quite amazing. Something we're sharing is resonating across the border too, and we love that.
Because we love you. That's why.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being here with us to talk about food and share your recipe and your podcasts. Can you please remind our listeners where to find your shows and anything else you'd like to promote and let them know about?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for asking. 19 Stories from Fear to Hope can be found via my website at CherylHolling.com, also on all your favorite listening platforms, and at 19stories.libsyn.com. The Voice Kitchen is found on all your favorite platforms. It's not on my website yet. That's something I'm working on, but I need to create that page and get it going. But the voicekitchen.libsyn.com. And there's anybody who has a recipe that they want to share, perhaps they're in the business and they want to join me, or for 19 Stories, if there's a guest you have in mind that might fit in with the theme of the show, then please feel free to write me at 19stories@soundsacralstudios.com. But I'll give you all that so you can put it on the show notes.
We absolutely will put it in the show notes.
Yep. Everything will be linked in the show notes, and this recipe too.
This has been delightful. Thank you so much for having me today. I was really honored that you asked me.
Well, it was a pleasure for us as well. We've had you on the list that we need to contact you for so long, and we're like, God, we really got to get on top of that list because we need to get Cheryl on
somebody's list. You know what I'm saying?
And now for the fine print. For links to recipes and many other random things we talked about in this episode, check out the show notes or our website, www.3kitchenspodcast.com. Join us over on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, YouTube, and TikTok to see what we're cooking up next. And if you love the show, tell a friend. Word of mouth is the #1 way people learn about new podcasts. Thank you so much for listening.
It doesn't look like what Aaron and Heather made. What the heck?